Okay, so the first of these videos, these next videos coming up, are on settling the West. So let's get right to it, talking about how the mining industry helped settle the West. Okay, so the growth of the mining industry. You have growing industries in the East. They needed the West's rich deposits of gold, silver, and copper to help them maintain. So these deposits brought settlers to the West Mountain states. Prospectors used simple equipment like picks, shovels, and pans to mine shallow deposits of ore by hand. Okay, this process is known as placer mining. Okay, so then corporations started to dig deep beneath the surface to mine the deposits of ore in a process known as quartz mining. In 1859, prospector Henry Comstock staked a claim for a silver mine in 6 Mile Canyon in Nevada. This caused Virginia City, Nevada, to go from an outpost to a boomtown almost overnight, because all these people came looking for silver. Okay. Several years later, the mines ran out of silver, and then you have, as a result, all these boom towns become ghost towns. Okay, so this cycle of boom and bust was repeated throughout throughout the mountainous West, and during the boom times, crime was always a serious problem. Vigilance committees were formed to track down and punish many of the wrongdoers. Okay, so mining also helped the growth of Colorado, the Dakota Territories, and Montana. Mining in Colorado spurred the building of railroads through the Rocky Mountains, and Denver became one of the supply points for the mining areas and the second largest city in the West after San Francisco. Okay, so what do we know the Wild West mainly for is ranching and cattle drives. Okay, that's what we think of. We think of the cowboy. So after the Civil War, many Americans began building large cattle ranches in the Great Plains. The Texas Longhorn was a breed of cattle that could survive this harsh climate in the plains, okay, because it was really hot and not a lot of water. Okay, the cattle ranching industry grew in part because of the open range, which was vast areas of grasslands that were owned by the federal government. Cattle raisers could graze these herds free of charge without any kind of boundaries associated with them. And during the Civil War, large numbers of eastern cattle were slaughtered to feed Union and Confederate armies. So after the war, beef prices soared. Okay, you don't have as much, and you have a high demand, so prices go up. This made it worthwhile to round up the Longhorns and drive them up to towards into Kansas and Kansas City. Okay, so the first long drive took place in 1866 across the Great Plains to the railroad area in Sedalia, Missouri. It proved that cattle could be driven north through the rail lines and sold for 10 times the price they could get in Texas. Okay, the major route for moving cattle was the Chisholm Trail that went from Texas to Abilene, Kansas. A long drive began with the spring roundup to collect cattle from the open range. Okay, so and then the cattle were divided and branded, and then cowboys moved the herds of cattle along the trails to the rail lines. Most cowboys were former Confederate Army soldiers, a few were Hispanic, and many were also African American. The long cattle drives ended, though, in part because the open range was largely fenced off with the invention of barbed wire. You know, they don't like those poking. The cattle don't like barbed wire poking into their skin. Investors from the East and from Britain put money into the cattle business, causing an oversupply of animals on the market, which also ended these. And you get an oversupply, so prices go down. Okay, so prices drop. All right, many ranchers went bankrupt as a result, and what also contributed were the harsh winters of 1886 and 1887 that killed a lot of the cattle. Okay, that's the end of this video here. As always, look for a short quiz on this, maybe at some point in time in the future, with this information. Thank you.